All right, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to this week's Stopping the Violence here in America. Today, we have a great speaker. Just give you a little bit of introduction to what this webinar represents and what we're striving to achieve. One of the things is that it started off with dealing with the prolific gun violence that is prevailing almost in our American society. Every day you seem to hear more cases and crimes that are committed by using the inanimate object, what we call guns. But I always say it's an inanimate object because it takes a human being with a motive to pick it up and use it, and then it becomes a very dangerous weapon against your other fellow man or woman. We have had several speakers previously. Last week, we just want to give another shout out to the former NFL player, Frank Murphy. He came on, gave his story that was prolific. And there you can see that he was a product of his environment. He was a product of not having the right mentorship around him. But once he was, God sent those particular mentors and influencers in a positive way in his life, he made a 180-degree change. And now he is an worldwide influencer of others and young people for the sake of good. Why do I say that? All the speakers that we had law enforcement come on, we had politicians come on, we had other community activists come on, and they have shared their hopes and strengths and their best practices, how they have been working in the community to stop the violence or curb violence in America, or looking at the intervention project programs or the other post programs that after the crime is committed, those type of wonderful programs that are out there. And actually, there's so many wonderful best practices. So one of our things that we're striving to do is how do we galvanize all of those together and be a catalyst to help those type of organizations get together in a collaborative effort, and we can tackle the situation collectively, because everybody does not have all the answers. But one of the things that we found, and through having all these wonderful and excellent speakers on, is that there are different avenues that we must take to deal with the violence in America and those things that have caused, or those issues that have caused people to pick up the guns and use them against their fellow human being. But today we have a very, no stranger to us, and I think he's been on before in the earlier part of our sessions and webinars, but he's here now to share some of his hopes and strengths, but some insights that he has. One of the things that Dr. Rouse, who is the co-chair or the chairman or co-chair of ACLC, which is the American Clergy Leadership Conference, and what it is a contingent, a group of about 5,000 pastors crossing denominations coming together for a common purpose, and that is a purpose to how do we start to build a better world, a world of peace, a world of justice, a world of goodness, because of our common factor, and that is Christ. Christ is the epitome of goodness, and he came to bring goodness to this world, and the pastors and clergy, they're just the extension of Christ. So he has another project that he's working on that he would introduce today, and that is initiating, observing April 4th as a day of nonviolence. And so we have asked him to come on and share with us that vision. And I think they're going to initiate something on April 4th as well anyway, but even to put it into legislation. Without any further ado, he's a close friend of mine. I really admire him. He's a great man of God, and he's just a great man in general. Let us invite and welcome our dear brother and friend, Dr. Luan Rouse. Welcome, Dr. Rouse.
Thank you, Reverend Oliver. It is so good to be able to join you today. I must express great appreciation to your continuation in seeking to do as Dr. Hachahanmu, the true mother of all of humanity, the only begotten daughter of God, has asked that we do at this time. And I must say, she being for me, and I hope for everyone to come to recognize the woman in charge at this time, it is good that we follow what she has placed before us. And her vision has been one, that we would bring an ending to violent crime. And in her peaceful, mother-like way, she just puts it out there in hopes that the children, the people of God, will pick up and follow it. Thanks to you, UPF, Dr. Michael Jenkins, Dr. Walsh, we've been able to come this far by faith, hope, and love. And I want to say that you and I had an opportunity to be with Dr. Jenkins' invitation to us to be together in San Francisco a few years ago. And we picked up then on Irvin Waller, who's really working on this across the nation, looking at ways. And it's just amazing the things that God does to bring us in line with doing what His chosen has asked to be done. And these things that are coming up have come up in ways in which we can't take credit for it. It's all belonging to the owner of the universe, as True Mother said. This all belongs to the Heavenly Parent, who by the Holy Spirit is guiding us. So I want to invite everyone today to consider what we are bringing forth, and I believe Nadia has the slides that we put forth, and we will go to those slides for just some discussion. I'll bring these points forward. I see Dr. Jenkins is with us today. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for being with us. And this is just the time for us to look at what developed out of the American Clergy Leadership Conference work in Louisville, Kentucky. Some, if not all of us, are aware that Louisville, Kentucky has in recent years been a hotbed for criminal activity in terms of violence, especially after Breonna Taylor was killed and they took to the streets in protest, for peaceful protest. But then one man, D. Garrett, while he was carrying a cross, was beaten unmercifully by law enforcement to a near-death experience. From that sprung many other things that's happening. And right now, Louisville is dealing with asking for Grandmaster Jay to be released, who brought his group, who have legal permission and rights to carry weapons. And those weapons, I think, frighten a lot of people. I must say that when I was speaking there in Louisville on one occasion on the outdoors, and all of them were lined up around us in somewhat protection of those of us who were speaking if we needed it. But yet it represented a signification of violence, meeting violence with violence. And I said to that group at that time, while we're at extreme ends from each other, for we represent, ACLC represents a nonviolent existence. And others is by the means that are necessary to establish justice and peace as they understand it to be. We have the commonality of wanting justice, fairness, and peace. So we continue to be on this track towards peace. Before we go to the slides, however, I do need to mention that I'm also here with UTS, with the Unification Theological Seminary. our students who are in the course with me on pastoral care and counseling meet at this hour, and this will be their first hour of nearly a 3 hour time that they spend with me on Wednesdays. We would normally do a field visit somewhere during the semester. So this hour is our field visit, coming outside of the classroom. For pastoral care and counseling, it's more than just sitting in a room or visiting a hospital or preaching from a pulpit or anything else that we do within church walls or in counseling sessions. If we read the work of Speed Lee and others, we'll find that social action is a part of pastoral care and counseling as well, speaking to the concerns of the community as they exist and have impact on the lives of the people that we serve for God. In this case, it is looking at what happened in the community of Louisville, and they invited the American Clergy Leadership Conference in to help establish and maintain peace at a time when many were planning to respond to what was going on in an unjust situation with law enforcement by either burning down or continuing in violence. And we came in and we prayed and we taught a different way, focusing mainly on the blessing. And the gentleman, D. Garrett, that I mentioned to you, he became a blessed couple. And then he says, we're going to put down the weapons. So he's out marching again with that cross. He's healed and he's gone back, picked up the cross. And on the cross this time, Reverend Oliver, he has your phrase in it. Put down those guns. Put the guns down and let's go to a non-violent existence. So Louisville became inspired. And the last time that I spoke with them was with them for Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday observance, but it was February the 10th, speaking for their Black History Month, which was my fourth major speech there in Louisville. Afterwards, they responded by saying, we want to go all in. We heard the message, and we would like to observe a day of nonviolence. And Peter Hayes, one from the Unification Community, I believe, was the first one to say to me, and what if that's on the date that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated? The significance of this then becomes very important to us. We can go to the slides now if they are available to us. So observing April the 4th as a day of nonviolence is what we are bringing forth. And when Nadia invited us to this, I thought to this day with you, I thought it was a good way in which to explain, and later, Dr. Jenkins, I will send you a write-up on it so that UPF could pick this up. For for it really to become a national situation, it needs to go through the channels as you have done with Parent Day, Children Day, and other things that you've made happen on a national scale. So in introducing this, and we pointed out already an explanation for the significance of it, I don't want this to just be a speech from Luan Rouse, as I told Reverend Oliver earlier. This can be an exchange time. So on any one of these points, Dr. Jenkins, others, Reverend Oliver, if you want to, just note to chime in and speak on any of these, please do so. Just indicate that, and we'll make that happen. But this is the next slide would say that the challenges of actualizing the day of nonviolence in the United States is what we need to look at as well. What's prevalent and what's prevailing for violence in the United States has to be a discussion that we have. It needs to be one in my paradigm, that takes us as the civil rights movement took Dr. King and other ministers, farmers, others, directly to the president. I believe that the president and other lawmakers need to talk to Dr. Jenkins and others who can get in that office and talk about this as a major movement for America. And as Father and Mother Moon would represent, I believe that it's a time that these leaders listen to what our leaders have to say to represent. And we can look at the obstacles to achieving a day of nonviolence, including the political polarization and the cultural norms that are before us. But not only that, on slide 3, and bring up the issue, Dr. Jenkins, of the possibilities for achieving a day of nonviolence. What would be our strategies for promoting nonviolence, such as education and community engagement? Examples for what has been successful in the past would be the civil rights movement, the nonviolent movement, how Truman went over to India like King did and saw the impact of Gandhi on that nation, on the world, on what was happening across the world. We can have that same type of influence. By having a day recognized of nonviolence, even right now before it becomes a national declaration, and I still think it could be time that that could be done. President Biden has responded to a letter that I've sent him. Did not say exactly that he would do it, but did not say he was opposed to it. And that's why I think that having the right people talk to him, his cabinet now, may be a good strategy towards getting this done. But I'll leave that to those who know more about strategizing for such than we do, and stick to where the American Clergy Leadership Conference is, which is on slide 4. The beloved community and holy community. For the last 2 years, the American Clergy Leadership Conference with the Young Christian Leadership Conference, and this year with the World Christian Leadership Conference, the way in which we observed Dr. King's emphasis on Dr. King's birthday was to have a round table discussing on the beloved community and the holy community. The concept espoused by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., of course, is the beloved community seeking justice, peace, respect, fairness. And we would bring that with the explanations from Dr. Hachahan Moon's call for the establishment of holy communities, and looking at how the unification movement, the unification church, has been the first one to really talk about holy communities all across the world, building their family church ministries with holy communities. We love it. Marie and I just joy in that concept, that call for us to live out true love, to live out the history of true love, to live out that which God has always intended for human beings. And so we feel that bringing these together can bring about a contribution that would help all of us move towards global peace. Last night, I had an opportunity to share with the Unification Theological Seminary community at our faculty roundtable a vision that came out of our 2-year discussion of the beloved community and the holy community. And what we're really kind of coming to an understanding of now is that with the blessed community from Jesus Christ and his disciples, we have this understanding of how individuals can move towards a conversion type religious experience. And then with Martin Luther King Jr., we have a slightly different concept of how society can be changed with a move towards understanding of peace with justice. With Father and Mother Moon specifically asking for this holy community, we see it where it merges that of Jesus Christ and that of the phrase that Martin Luther King Jr. coined, and bring the blessed community and the beloved community into this holy community of reaching the 8+ billion people of the world with a full understanding of the concepts of God's union of man and woman, the concepts of the foundations for the love of God, the love of male, female, the couple's love of one another, the love of the children's love of the parents, and the children's love of one another, and expanding that out to the total community. We believe that this day could represent an opportunity for us to teach in this manner as well. The next slide will show another aspect that I presented last night, was that of a new world ethic. Not new, this new world ethic taught by Hans Kung will bring us a great overview of what he found by working with all the religions in the world he could find and study. All of them had one commonality that he found, that there is an aspect of understanding of love. And he concluded that there needs to be a universal value that is formulated into informing the social roles and the social laws and that which governs society for all of us throughout the world. And with this, then, a new world ethic can lead us to promote nonviolence and social responsibility. I believe that in the holy community, when we teach the comparative study with our teachings from the unification faith now, that has been somewhat left out of mainstream discussions, what I would propose us doing is bring it to the mainstream and bring the others that have been mainstream into the understanding of the unification new wine, as Dr. Jenkins informed me when he was going through his doctoral studies. This new wine that really has to be in new wine skin. So what we're working on is to establish the new wine skins, the generations that are coming now, to receive this new wine in this new era of moving from exclusivism and inclusism into the multiculturalism where all are welcome. I love the example of the things that the way in which True Mother works with us is that we are in this world, in the social situations, we've got it going on, violence is there. But what she's saying to us when she says end violent crime is love your neighbor. Love the one who's struggling. Let love lead the way. And we're going to find a difference here. So the next slide takes us into looking at the psychological, the sociological, biological, and the sociological essentials for bringing about this non-violent reality, so that we can go through explain the multiple factors that will be necessary in promoting nonviolence. We can have discussions of the sociological factors, including cultural norms and social structures. Let me emphasize here, before I go to the other aspects, is that a unique perspective that True Mother brought to my mind when she stated to us, again, it hit me. She had stated it before, but it hit me early in this year, Reverend Oliver, that God is the owner of the universe. That means if God is the owner of the universe, we need to look at all of the historical perspective, the cultural perspectives, everything that has brought us here, and have a discussion around it of how the social structures have been built and informed by all of that. Then we can go into the psychological discussions of the factors of the attitudes and the emotions that we've developed around that. And then we can discuss intelligently the biological factors, including genetics and the brain function. I do believe that when we go through this, and this is an offering that UTS, I think, can eventually bring, is to bring back the neurological aspects. The nervous system is an interesting system. It's a lot like the solar system that science has to study, secularism is built around. We need to bring them into this significant understanding of the whole nervous system and its process, and how neurological neurotheology can be a part of the religious study. What True Mother is asking us about is to bring in, like True Father did, the full study of humanity. That's a religious study. It is not confined to any particular group's doctrine or theological task. It is really looking religiously at what God has given, the parent of the universe has made here before us, and we study every aspect of it so that the image of God can be represented in the things that we do, things that we say. So the discussion of the ecological factors also will have an impact on what is done because it represents the environment, and we need to be able to go there. And number 7, and then 2 more slides, and then I really want us to talk about all of this as much as we can within this time. Our national responsibility. I don't think that we can have a nonviolent day be effective without calling on national responsibility. And national responsibility for promoting nonviolence with all of the arenas within our nation that should be joining on Wednesday's discussions that Reverend Oliver is leading. And I think, Reverend Oliver, you have had representative speakers come from a lot of those areas, and we need to continue to have that. Without this, we will not be able to advance where we ought to be. So even promoting this hour of every Wednesday becomes a major thing that we need to do. And Dr. Jenkins, I think that the American Clergy Leadership Conference needs to pick up on that. And I will talk to the women in ministry. If we could get the women in ministry on it, I tell you what, it'll fly because they're sending stuff out every day, and they will be letting everybody know to be a part of this. It will really go where we need it to go. And the responsibility also for discussing the role of government. You know, a lot of times when government's there, we think that's the end of it and everybody else backs off. But no, government has a role, but it's not the end all, not the cure all. We need to go to the institutions that should be involved in promoting nonviolence, even the main institution being the family institution. And then we need to know how to have individuals come and make contributions to promoting this nonviolence as well. Yeah, I saw a picture that I almost wanted to include on the slide, but it was even too powerful for me. It represented one of the recent shootings of the kid and the blood that splattered all on the wall. and the kid's head going down. We don't need to see that. When we know that it's happening, we need to end that. And that's where we are in promoting a day of nonviolence. Hopefully, will bring us to an ending of all of these things. That's why I'm glad in the concluding slide would be to bring us some summarize key points. And one of the key points is that one, like a DGAR, who had been through the crime scene, had gone to jail, is pending coming off of, I think in the net by May, off of probation, who would discover what true parents offer and discover through that this is the answer that I've always needed. This is the answer that I've needed coming from a prostitution situation. This is the answer from his mother. This is the answer that I needed coming from a situation of being accused of molestation. This is what I've needed coming out of incestuous incidents. This is what I've needed coming thinking that being with a gang of those who've gone through trouble is, this is what I needed to say to me that my life has value too. What the unification community brings and all of the faith bodies bring is the opportunity for people to come to understand their value. And when we understand valuing one another, perhaps we can come to know that we are too valuable to allow human violence to take us out. So we invite people to come now. And what we need, I would say from a group like this meeting, is a call to action for individuals and institutions to work towards achieving a day of nonviolence. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Reverend Rouse. That was profound. I would like to, anyway, I don't want to put the slide back up, but I think it was like one of the third, the variety of areas that needs to be addressed that plays a critical part in stopping violence, curbing the violence, reducing violence, if you will. And I think that's what I was saying. I mean, I know when I look at all of those different categories that were there in that little circle, from the psychological, strategic, environment, cultural, all those type of things play a critical role in different people's violent acts, what motivates them, what's the root cause of violence in America and violence around the world. So this is what I was saying. This seminar has been incredibly enlightening from that perspective. When I say best practices, we're looking at people who were addressing those different areas, and we can see some results coming from there. And it is true, I think one of the things that I came up with was that when you go to the root cause, I was a psych major in college, right? So yeah. when the root cause of all issues and problems stem from the family, and it stems from a lack of love. How much have we loved those communities that many times are the hotbed of crime and violence? Also, then you look at other cultural experiences, lacks of love coming from, if you go back to the young lady who just went in that Christian school and just shot 3 children. You can look at it and go, what motivated her? There was some pain somewhere, that she got all confused, but it goes back to some pain as a suffering. So yeah, I agree with you. I would like to, just confirm Mother Moon who we affectionately call True Mother, has initiated this particular program because she said and Dr. Jenkins can speak to that, she had to ask Dr. Jenkins, who is the president of UPF America and International, had said that, please address the gun violence in America. So, okay, we can look at gun violence, and sometimes gun violence looks at that inanimate object that, yes, we might could reduce the guns in the streets. Yes, those things, but that does not solve the problem because people are still going to pick up the gun. They're going to find a way to pick up those guns. They're going to find a way to get them illegally. What are the root causes? Because a gun causes what? Violence. So what are the causes and the root cause of violence? So I really want to thank you, and I look forward to discussing more with you and dialoguing with you, having Reverend Jenkins also speak on this as well. And yes, we did have that wonderful event in San Francisco as well that was addressing the violence that is going on. But I don't think we really deal with the root cause because all of us play a role in the curbing of violence in our communities and in our society as a whole. And I think that, like you said, the unification principle, what we learn is that all problems stem from the family. All healing of all humanity will come through the family again. So how do you begin to categorize that into what we call layman terms, realistic terms, so people can, understand how it applies to their particular situation and environments that they are subjective to. So I want to thank you so much. I want to open up the floor. Dr. Jenkins, if you would like to chime in, we would love to hear from you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Reverend Oliver. I really appreciate you, Dr. Rouse, and this proposal is really a very, first of all, thank you for your slide presentation, because that really helps us think more deeply about why a special day designated for a day of nonviolence on the date that Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And I can see it really has a lot of depth and a lot of thought that you placed into it, a lot of heart. And I think it can work. I think it can work to awaken America. America is really in need of a great awakening. And also thank you, Reverend Oliver, for this program. It's gone in many different directions. We were asked by Mother Moan, and it was to really all of us, ACLC and everybody, to really stop the gun violence. She talked about guns first. So Dr. Rouse and I and Reverend Oliver went to a program that was set up by Dr. Rouse and Dr. Walsh for the UPF, and I supported. But it was on ending violent crime and discussion on this whole theme. Dr. Irwin Waller from Canada was our main speaker, but we had religious leaders there, we had civic leaders there, we had all kinds of pastors and religious leaders. But Ending Violent Crime, this is a very interesting book published by Roman and Littlefield. It's still available online. But Dr. Waller's a scholar, but he studied cities. He studied cities and their different programs to reduce violence. And he came away with a lot of statistics, including cities like Chicago and others, who actually he was recognizing as having done some good things. But his main point is that rather than put all of our resources in responding to already moving violent acts, that's also important. Prevention in terms of stopping the violence on the street or stopping the terrible tragedy in Tennessee. But he goes into the fact that those cities that put more resources into preventative programs like education for families, education for officers in law enforcement, and much less on prison, building more prisons, putting those resources ahead of the violence, not after the violence started. Like you've been really clear about, Reverend Oliver, the family is very, very central. I love Dr. King. On Dr. King changed my life, as did Father and Mother Moon. But the thing that changed my life, I was a pastor in our Baltimore church, and this is back in the early 80s, 80, 81. And someone brought a vinyl record in to the church, and we had a record player there, and it was Dr. King's sermons on a record. There was tape decks then and that kind of thing, but this was a vinyl record. So I listened to it. I had heard many things from Dr. King, but I hadn't studied much. So when I heard those sermons, it struck my heart, really touched me deeply. And then when we got into in our work in Chicago, some of the civil rights leaders, Reverend A.I. Dunlap, Dr. James Bevel, and others, stood up for us through the ACLC, but that was a precursor to the ACLC. But they stood up for our own dignity when the Chicago Tribune attacked our work with educators and with clergy. They did a front page attack and called us a pejorative name and so forth. And I saw those leaders come into action, how to address this, how to address the court. And then that's where I opened up, and my life really was affected by Dr. King's life course, and finding out that he was affected by Mahatma Gandhi when he was in the university, Boston University. And, Mahatma Gandhi, which I never knew, was affected by Tolstoy's book. And that was, the kingdom of God is within you. Most we know the big famous Tolstoy books that are not necessarily spiritual, but this is a spiritual book. The kingdom of God is within you. Gandhi studied that book and really saw the power of Christian principles of loving your enemy, turning the other cheek. And then Gandhi practiced it in India, and he practiced it in South Africa, and it worked. It had enormous effect. So applying that in the United States, Dr. King applied it, and he transformed America. It really changed the whole direction of our engagement and our brotherhood, sisterhood. It changed everything. And it's so needed to be brought back, Dr. Rouse. And I think you have that anointing to bring that back as a scholar, as a theologian, but also mostly as a pastor. So that's my feeling. This is really a very, very encouraging idea. And I think that it can be passed, that becomes an official day of nonviolence. It'd be very appropriate, because no one brought the whole issue of nonviolence forward like Dr. King did. Many brought it forward, but he brought it forward and practiced it. Now, can we apply nonviolence to addressing the violence in our communities? Of course we can. Nonviolence is like a weapon itself. It's a theological and spiritual weapon that you don't, but it goes so deep. If you study the principles of nonviolence, it's really wonderful. It actually can stop bickering and fighting if you practice what they teach, because Dr. King's principles were very clear. Like, for example, you're not here to defeat your enemy. You're here to redeem your enemy and make him your friend. You're also here not to ever denigrate or push your enemy down. You're here to edify and strengthen your enemy, and with God's love and God's truth. So beautiful. So the movement wasn't just, we practice nonviolence and we turn the other cheek when the police hit us with a baton. That's an external expression of one thing, but the teaching of nonviolence, we should really study that, because And then we applied it to the Chicago Tribune. It totally worked. It took 4 months, 4 months of marches on the Chicago Tribune. It took arrests. It took a number of things, but the clergy knew how to practice it. They knew how to practice it. And it goes right down to your heart towards the publisher of the Chicago Tribune. It went right down to that level. But some of the civil rights leaders would teach us you can't have this anger in your heart. You're not going to reconcile. If you're approaching your enemy with the hope that you're going to bring him down, you're going to embarrass him, humiliate him, destroy him, and demand justice. He said that's not the way to go. Demanding an apology. That was the first thing. Everybody thinks when the media does something wrong, you should demand, something. But actually, it naturally comes when you touch somebody's heart. So all that is really deep stuff. Yeah, I'd love to see this, brought into our communities, into our homes. How can these young people that are in conflict, a lot of these things that are going on? Congressman Danny Davis's grandson was killed in his own entryway by two friends who was going to school with. They had swapped some Supreme jogging suit for some Nike or some Jordan shoes, Air Jordans or something like that. They had swapped shoes for a sweatsuit, and they wanted it back. And he got upset. And the girl that was there had a gun, and they were friends. They were high school friends, but she got upset because she was offended. And then she egged on the other guy, her boyfriend. You're going to let him treat me like this? And she pulled out the gun and she egged the guy on, and he shot Congressman Davis's grandson in the head, his son's son. And then they were arrested, and it was tragic, beyond tragic. But I'll never forget Congressman Davis's speech. He has that he's one Dr. Rouse we could work with for sure. Congressman Davis, you never hear his name throwing hand grenades at the different political differences. You never hear his name because he's always trying to get stuff done. And he works with all people. He really stood for my father, Mother Moon when they attacked us and attacked him. But that thing was his speech after that tragic occurrence was, I grieve today for my grandson and for my son and his family, who will now have an empty seat at their Thanksgiving dinner next week. It was like a week before Thanksgiving. And he said, but I don't only grieve for my grandson, my family. I also grieve for the families of the other two young people whose lives have now been ruined. They will be in prison for the rest of their lives. And it will be very, very, and their seats will also be empty next week at Thanksgiving. And I grieve for our community and our nation. And I thought, wow. So I think he would be a great candidate for us to help bring President Biden in on this, Dr. Rouse. And, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for this program, Reverend Oliver. It's really growing significantly. And we may be ready, Dr. Rouse, to have round two with Dr. Waller, Dr. Irwin Waller.
That's right.
I would like to see if his scholarship has been updated. Thank you very much.
Thank
you, Dr. Jenkins.
Reverend Oliver, Dr. Jenkins just brought some points that are in my mind that would be glad. I hadn't thought about this aspect. I hadn't asked God why this is so significant for me, but I don't go here very often. When I first moved to New York, a month after I moved to New York, Dr. Jenkins, my brother was still alive at that time, my brother Bernard that I've talked to you about, and since then he has ascended. He ascended in 2016, but it was 2004. His only son was gunned down in South Philadelphia when he was driving taxi by two guys that he had just turned off from working, and just decided, he saw these two guys and just decided, well, I'm just give them a ride. So one of the guys told us. He said there was no reason to kill him. And one of the other guys said he offered them anything they wanted. and said, and gave it to him. Said, but the other guy just wouldn't walk away and shot him. So these points from Martin Luther King Jr. that says bringing about this social change, bringing about where the guns are laid down. King had really 5 points in that. He says that nonviolence seeks to win, Dr. Jenkins, as you were mentioning. And maybe, and Nadia, I'm mentioning these because maybe they can be a part of every community. I know Washington has plans, Louisville has plans for the 4th already. Maybe we could give these even just to every community. That King says nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. You know, King was heavy on that. He believed that nonviolent resistance was the most effective way to bring about social change because it sought to win the hearts and minds of the enemy rather than defeating them through force. The second thing that he said is nonviolent to resist violence of the spirit as well as the body. That the spirit can become a violent spirit. And he believed that nonviolence was not just about the physical action, but about the way people treated each other. And if we can bring people into treating one another with respect, rejecting hate, anger, and embracing them with love and compassion so that empathy is there with everybody. And the other thing he said, nonviolence holds that suffering can educate and transform. So he believed that when people suffer a cause, it's kind of like the indemnity situation, Dr. Jenkins,
Exactly.
that you teach. It can lead to a deeper understanding and commitment to the cause. So nonviolence, therefore, was not about avoiding the suffering, but rather embracing it as a means for transformation. And then I give you 2 more of these as we come to, I know, Dr. Oliver, you've got to close. But nonviolent resistance avoids external physical violence. He believed that this should never resort to physical violence, but should instead rely on tactics such as demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations, boycotting if necessary, sit-ins if necessary, but nothing violent. And that's why we have to be careful when we say we're going to take direct action and we just get out on the street. Not the
Yes,
king isn't that way. It has to be organized and, all about the makings of peace, like your peace walk, like you do with the peace walk. I mean, these are the lines. And the final one that comes to mind is he believed that the universe is on the side of justice. Whenever I think of that, that's a statement like through Mother saying. That's why it hit me so hard when it resonated with me in January. That the owner of the universe is God, and that this universe moves us towards justice. Justice will prevail when we recognize that it's under God, and ways to align ourselves with the forces of justice,
wonderful.
righteousness in the universe. That's why I want the beloved community and the holy community and the blessed community really let us bring it together and let us represent this. So I'll get information to Nadia and to others and anyone else that you say, Reverend Oliver, as you, Dr. Jenkins, work on this becoming national. We'll work on some practical things.
Thank you, Dr. Dr. Rouse, for what you just said. It's interesting because I just sent Reverend Jenkins, Dr. Jenkins, a note early this morning. I don't know. I'm in different time frames, so you lose. But I know it was today somewhere along the line. And I said, all of these prolific speakers that have come on with the best practices, and many of their best practices have successfully curbed some violence, have addressed the issue of the broken that needs to be uplifted. And once they're uplifted, then God can speak to what we call our original mind, that God mind, that breath, the God breath, the life of breath in the nostril, the life in man, that everyone without exception, even the most hardened criminal, have God's DNA in there somewhere. But how do we speak to it? Right. So I said, why don't we get all of these people together who have shown best practices, and then we can give what we call the headwind thought, which is the new word, a new wine that can concretize all of this together so that it can be a very powerful construct to begin to teach, And one other thing, we can talk about the idea, but one thing I like about Mother Moon and Father Moon's teaching is what we call principles of restoration. Principle of restoration only means that everybody's responsible. So what part do I play in helping to curve this? Because that's essential and critical to the whole picture. So as we look at all of those components, then we can begin to actualize and to really inculcate those principles that Dr. King, all those things that you shared that is very, 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 very powerful. So I just sent him out. I says, after Korea, can we have a conference, to bring everybody here, not knowing that you were going to come and say this and present this. I mean, I heard a little, but I didn't really look at it as definedly as you had presented today. And so I think that we can and we will find some great synergy in putting all of that together. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Jenkins.
Reverend Oliver, you're right on target, because with this last event at the church, the time is right. The whole nation is crying out again, but this one really, again, affected people on another level. It's affected.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a very
amazing.
It's a very always tragic, but right now is the time to address this more. I think we could even have a meeting down in Tennessee and go forward from there, because we've got to, and a snap solution is not going to work. It's going to take something where the nation awakened to the beloved community, or the Heavenly Parents' holy community. It's got to be a change. Also in the attitudes of people that are springing up until people just become violent. Thank you, Dr. Rouse and Dr. Oliver, for this program, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jenkins, for even sharing what you were sharing. And it takes a village to raise the child, and it's going to take the village to help bring the child back to the forefront of healing and be the conduits, if you will, for the change and reducing violence in America and across the world. And one of the things we do, Sarah, as we come to the close, want to thank Dr. Rouse, is that if we do well in America, we can be the catalyst for change, because America is always the litmus test and always the prototype for the world arena. So as we do these things in nonviolence, even Dr. King's nonviolence, even though he took it to another level from Gandhi, but still his effectiveness has touched the world. That means that America still is in the position to touch the world and set the example. So Dr. Rouse, I want to thank you for being that kind of person and being that kind of, if you will, desire to be that kind of conduit to not only affect the world, America, but affect the world. I want to thank you, Dr. Jenkins, as well, for all that you are doing. And Dr. Jenkins does so much incredible stuff here in America. I think he's the root. I always call him, he's the dirt of America.
The soul.
Can I break in here just for a sec? We've got some really amazing people on that I just want to let you know about.
Oh, sure.
Dee Garrett is here with us.
Oh,
okay.
And Dr. Madeline Clark Alexander. And
that's
also,
right, my dear.
So, who else is here? Oh, besides, Elaine Hassan. Dr.
Yes,
Elaine Hassan is here too.
praise the Lord.
So I just wanted to let you all know besides Dr. Rouse's wonderful students too.
Okay, so what I would do, if you don't mind, if we have one or two people we didn't let, it was this three-way dialogue. We don't normally have, if we want one or two people, we can go by maybe like 3 more minutes or something like that, that wants to say something. I know that I always have my dear sister, and she's been a pillar for us here, and that's Dr. Madeline Alexander, if she wanted to say something. And anyone else, Dr. Elaine Hansen has her hand up. After Dr. Madeline, let's get Dr. Elaine Hansen come on as well. You can put her up on the screen as well. Go ahead, Dr. Madeline.
Reverend Oliver, it'd be good if you could have Dee Garrett say a word before you close.
Okay, that's great. Dee Garrett, if we can bring her up. So why don't we go, Dr. Madeline?
As
Dr.
always,
Elaine, and
always,
then
as,
Dee.
Can you hear
as
me?
always, I say thank you so much, Reverend Oliver, for this platform. Dr. Rouse, your work was so prolific. And, you know, it always, when you have that spirit, when you hear good information, it's like your soul is being watered. And in that, you know, as we come together collectively, is so much that's being done, and I'm captivated by Mother's word. And you have that epiphany to say God is the owner of the universe, and then to be reminded of Psalms 21 and 24 and 1 that says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell in it." So God is still concerned about everything that concerns us, and as we move forward, showing our concern and our love for our communities, our cities, and our states, collectively, we will bring about a change.
Amen.
Peace and grace.
Amen.
Elaine Hansen, welcome.
Can you hear?
Yeah, I can't hear you now. We can see. You're muted and your camera is off.
It's okay. You got me?
Yes.
Okay. I would love to work on a team here in Ohio. I'm a product of 3 murders and 2 attempted murders. And they were my mother, my brother, and my dad. And my attempted murders were me and my sister. But the thing of it is, it's something about the love of God that I went to pray for the man that killed my mother. But the thing of it is love gonna conquer all. And I surely would like to work on a team of forgiveness so I can communicate with some people, because I personally know what it is to have someone taken out of my life. And I also know what it is to be a product of almost murdered myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, you know, with Dr. Rouse and what we're doing here, we're trying to create that particular platform. We've had some other Dr. Rouse. If we have these other people come on, like the one from Kansas City, who has brought a collective collage of people together to work together so we can solve this problem along with the April 4th. I think we could do some great things. So we look forward to talking with you and look forward to working with you in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
God
I
bless you.
I am an ambassador of peace, and God bless you. Thank you all.
Hey, thank you. God bless you too. Thank you.
Thank
Dee Garrett.
Dee, I don't know if he's available. I asked him to unmute, but Dee, are you available? Yes, he is. Yay.
Thank God.
Here he is.
How y'all doing?
All right, Dee.
Excellent. Did you want to say something? Response.
I was in 2 meetings at the same time. I'm sorry.
So Dee, we just wanted you to give a word where you are right now, what you're doing, and I told them about your cross, about your near-death experience, but you're back out there working for this Put the Guns Down. You could just say a word to us about what putting the guns down means.
Oh yeah. So right now, I'm involved with violence prevention. So I'm an interrupter. But what also with X-Hate, what we do is we work together with different groups with like we find these hot spots and we send these interrupters to these hot spots to do outreach and help these kids find ministries to get involved with or other avenues that they can get involved with to help them change their energy into a positive way. So I've been doing this nonviolence work for like now with the city for 2 months now, and taking the energy of what happened to me with the police here, but coming together to bridge to target this problem together here in Louisville.
And I might mention, Reverend Oliver, it's interesting that the Department of Justice found Louisville law enforcement guilty of injustice in the way in which they handle situations.
Sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for coming on. And Dr. Rouse and everyone else, you know, we're out of time right now. We would like to work with you guys and make some really powerful things happen as we look and work collectively. The only way we're going to do this is work. We need healing. You know, it's easy to look at the problem and judge the problem. But let's get into in the realm of what is the healing, because there is some healing processes that needs to be addressed, and we can't leave no stone unturned to address those different problems, issues, and come up with the right resolution, centering on the right principles, you know, principles of heart. So Reverend Dr. Rouse, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, D. Garrett, for work that you're doing. And we look forward, because we've spoken with a lot of young men like him came on, you know, and have shared so many powerful stuff with us and touch your heart, because they realize that these young guys who go through this, you know, if they had the right track or on the right track, they would be the viable contributors to the betterment of their community and ultimately the better of their nation and society as a whole. So thank you. God bless you, everyone. We look forward to next week, but we look forward to Dr. Rouse for April 4th, and we look forward to, let's have a conference, as I had indicated. I just wrote Dr. Jenkins, let's have a national conference and bringing the best practices together. And I think the theme of what is it, nonviolence, observing a nonviolence day, could be one of the central themes as well. God bless everyone. Thank you so much for all coming on, and we look forward to seeing you next week. God bless. Dr. Rouse, thank you again. That PowerPoint was great. I really enjoyed it, and we can use that. And it covered some of the things that we have been learning through bringing the different people on who can address all of those different points. So thank you. God bless you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Oliver. Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
Rouse.
Rouse.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Oliver.
Yeah.
God
Thank you,
bless.
Dr.
Take
Rachel
care.
Jenkins.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Today.
Thank you.
Thank you, D.
Hey, we
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
everyone.
Hassan and
Thank you
Dr.
Thank you,
Alexander.
Nadia. Thank you, Dr.
God
Madeline
bless
Clark
everybody. Thank
Alexander.
you, Dr.
Yeah,
Rouse.
Dr.
bless.
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr. Rouse.
Thanks,
Alexander.
everybody.
Barbara.
God bless everybody.
thank
Take
you.
care.
Nadia.
Thank you, Dr.
Rosary.
Mrs. Jenkins. Thank you.
Nadia.
Thank you,
Thank
Minister
you.
Jenkins.
God bless.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Reverend
Bless you
Oliver.
all.
Yeah, you're
That was
welcome.
wonderful.
Beautiful.
Next
Wonderful
year
day.
going to take place.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, students, I'll see you at 3:30.
Okay, Dr.
Excellent.
Ross. All right. Thank you, EJ.